Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is the custom session we've put together just for you, for the learner who really wants to cut through all the noise. Our mission today is, well, it's super focused. We're going to unpack the source material you sent over and just pull out the essential insights. Okay, let's unpack this. Sources you've provided are, well, they're incredibly concentrated.
Yeah.
We're really just working with the title of a work and a key phrase, which means we have to analyze the framework of the thing, not the full text.
Exactly. The material is titled Excerpts from Ascension of the Prophet, the Meraj Discourses. And then there's that central phrase you pointed out, the one that seems to structure the whole document, Merajun Nabi Parbayan.
Right, and for anyone just coming to this, that one phrase, Merajun Nabi Parbayan, it's like the perfect compass.
Yeah.
It just immediately tells you the subject, the main figure, and, most importantly, the format.
Yeah.
So we have the Mirage, the Ascension, relating to the Nabi, the prophet.
Yes.
And it's all presented as a bayan, a discourse, like a structured sermon.
And that structural guarantee is really everything here. In a lot of traditions, a deep dive isn't always about the content itself, which, is often already known. It's more about the interpretive lens that's being used. This phrase tells us that the lens is systematic, it's authoritative, and it's focused.
Okay, but I have to ask, for someone who's looking for those, golden nuggets of knowledge, if we only have the title, aren't we just sort of analyzing linguistics? Can we really call this a deep dive, or is it more of a high-level definition exercise?
That's a fair question, but that limitation, kind of paradoxically, is the core insight. When a tradition gives you only the title for such a foundational event, it's telling you everything about the intent of the source. The Mirage is just too vast an idea for some casual treatment. The fact that this source is explicitly labeled a bayan, that's a structural guarantee. It guarantees authority, it guarantees organization, and it guarantees an interpretive legacy. That's a huge takeaway for any learner.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. The source is promising expertise. The author isn't just, recounting a story. They are making an argument about its theological weight. And here's where it gets really interesting, because now we can start to figure out what the content has to be, even without seeing the pages.
Exactly. Since the whole point is a discourse, it has to move way beyond a basic narrative. A narrative just answers what happened. But a discourse titled Merajun Nabi Parbayan, it has to answer, what does this fundamentally mean?
What does it mean for the nature of the prophet?
Right. And for us, the audience, what's the significance?
Okay, so let's break that down. The core subject.
Yeah.
The mirage. The word itself implies what? A physical and a spiritual ascent through the heavens. The very choice to dedicate an entire bayan to this one event suggests how monumental it is. It's not just a journey, it's like a recalibration of the whole universal order.
And we have to remember the context that the discourse format implies. It has to explore this idea of proximity. The ascension is often seen as the nearest possible approach to the divine. So a serious discourse on this topic, it absolutely has to analyze the theological limits of human experience and the unique status given to the prophet that allowed him to cross those limits.
That's a powerful deduction.
Yeah.
So if the discourse is actually effective, it's not just detailing the itinerary.
Yeah.
First heaven, then the second heaven, and so on.
No, not at all.
It's explaining the consequences of those encounters.
Yeah.
What new knowledge came out of it? What old ideas were overturned? The discourse is like the crucial filter for all of that.
And that ties right into the second piece, the Nabi, the prophet. The ascension is completely tied to his identity. The discourse isn't just on an ascent, it's the ascent of the prophet. So a systematic explanation has to tackle questions of validation and confirmation. Like, did the journey prove his status, or did his status that he already had enable the journey? The discourse structure forces the author to address that exact distinction.
For you, the learner, knowing that framework is like, it's like having a ready-made set of critical questions. When you finally get to read the text, you're not just passively taking in information.
Right.
You're actively looking for the author's answer to these really foundational theological puzzles.
And it guarantees that the knowledge you get will be organized logically. A bayan needs a structure. It has to be navigable. We can pretty much expect the discourse to organize the material either chronologically, the stages of the journey.
Or thematically.
Or thematically, exactly. The lessons that were derived from it.
And think about the lessons that are implied by a systematic discourse like this. The ascension is so rich with material, like the institution of specific devotional practices. A proper discourse would spend times not just saying that a practice started here, but explaining the philosophical why. Why was it established right then at the absolute height of spiritual experience?
Absolutely. The discourse turns that historical narrative into actionable knowledge. It connects this transcendent cosmic event to the everyday practice of the believer. And that synthesis, that combination of the sacred and the mundane, that's what gives the Bayan its lasting power.
So if the source material is focused on a discourse, we know it has a high explanatory burden. It has to deliver. It's got to cover the significance of the event, the validation of the figure, and the practical takeaways for the community.
Right.
The author can't really skip any of those steps if they want to deliver a coherent discourse.
And the beauty of that phrase, Meraj Nabi par bayan, is that little word, par, on, or regarding. It just confirms the entire structure is dedicated to the topic. It's the centerpiece. That's the difference between, say, a chapter in a biography and a dedicated intellectual exercise.
Let's also think about the authority that's implied by this structure. I mean, who gets to deliver a bayan on the Ascension?
That's a great point.
It has to be an acknowledged authority.
Yeah.
Right? So that tells you the source isn't some simple opinion piece. It's drawn from a recognized scholarly or interpretive lineage.
Which raises another important point about tradition. The very need to create and circulate a formal discourse on the Meraj. It confirms that this event isn't just some static historical memory. It's a living concept. It's something that requires continuous interpretation to stay relevant for new audiences. The Bayan is what translates the ancient event into a modern context.
We've basically established that the material is inherently interpretive and systematic. It's meant to teach and to contextualize, making the knowledge cohesive and very focused. The structural insight here is that the source is really designed to prevent misunderstanding.
Yes. The structure itself sort of filters out any casual or incomplete takes on it. It mandates a rigorous examination of the spiritual implications, the prophetic experiences, and the revelations received during the ascent.
And for you, the learner, this is just a massive time saver. You know going into the text that you won't get bogged down in simple history. You'll be engaging with a high-level theological synthesis.
A synthesis that connects the dots between a transcendent event and its earthly consequences.
We've spent this time really digging into the implications of just a few words, because when sources are this dense, even if it's just a title, the intellectual architecture is the insight. We haven't extracted the specific content, but we've extracted the entire intellectual framework it has to operate in.
And analyzing the frame before you read the content, that's the key to critical thinking here. When you approach the full text, you'll be looking for how the speaker defends the nature of the Meraj, how they define the prophet's role in it, and what specific moral or theological lessons they structure for their audience. All of it driven by the scholarly expectations set by that title.
Okay, let's circle back to our core mission here. We started with the title, Ascension of the Prophet, the Meraj Discourse, and that one phrase, Merajun Nabi par bayan. So what does this all mean for you, the well-informed learner?
It means that you've been given the key, really. The essential identification of a rigorous, systematic text. This source is evidence of a powerful, scholarly tradition where the focus isn't just on reporting a miracle, it's on sustaining a deep, organized, and authoritative discussion, a bayan around the implications of the prophet's ascension, the Merajun Nabi.
So the ultimate takeaway is a guaranteed promise, a promise of clarity, of structure, and of depth. And it's all about one of the most foundational events in the tradition. You know you are engaging with material that is designed to teach, not just to narrate.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the continued need for a discourse on this topic shows the living nature of the theological tradition. It suggests that every generation has to re-engage with the Meraj to understand what it means for them right now.
That's a really profound connection. The title itself guarantees timeless relevance. So for you, the learner, this just confirms that you're tapping into a stream of knowledge that values continuous, focused examination over a simple historical summary. So as you continue your exploration of this topic, maybe consider this provocative thought. If the discourse's whole structure is designed to connect the cosmic event of the Ascension to daily life, what specific practical instruction, not just abstract theology, must be prioritized and consistently re-emphasized in every generation's bayan? That's your next step in applying this knowledge. Thank you for diving deep with us.